President Biden says he has not decided on whether or not he will run for re-election. The president told 60 Minutes' Scott Pelley it is, quote, much too early for him to commit to running again in 2024. But President Biden did acknowledge he's leaning towards one last presidential campaign. Let's listen.
My intention, as I said to begin with, is that I would run again. But it's just an intention. But is it a firm decision that I run again? That remains to be seen.
Joining us now is CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Ed, there were so many jaw-dropping moments, truly an excellent way to start the season for 60 Minutes. What do you make of the president saying he intends but will not commit to run in 2024?
It's a pretty Biden-esque statement, Lilia, in that when it comes to making big decisions, this is somebody who doesn't commit until he's really sat and formally thought about it. And in this case, will sit and think about it with his family and with his closest advisors. As he said, he intends to run, but he hasn't made the firm plan or decision to do so. And that's keeping with decades of experience and sort of past practice. As they discussed in the interview, that's in part because he knows that fate has a way of intervening at different times in his life, whether it's the death of his wife and young daughter, whether it's the death of his son, Beau. He understands that things can happen that get in the way of your intentions. And so while it is expected by White House officials and Democrats close to the president that he will take the time this fall to make the final plans to run in 2024, by being as ambiguous as he was there and by leaving the door open, it's going to allow speculation to continue to swirl about what would happen if he were to decide not to run. Remember, he turns 80 in November and would be the oldest president once that happens, and certainly the oldest reelected president if that were to happen in 2024.
You know, this really, it feels like a crossroad moment. Watching the interview last night, I just kept thinking, you know, he comes from a really positive moment, politically speaking, to a difficult moment, economically speaking. And it resembles also where we stand in the pandemic, whether it's over or not. And that was one of the questions that Scott Pelley had for him. He declared the pandemic to be over, but also acknowledged that COVID-19, of course, is still an issue. Let's listen to this.
Yeah.
We still have a problem with COVID. We're still doing a lot of work on it. But the pandemic is over. If you notice, no one's wearing masks. Everybody seems to be in pretty good shape. And so I think it's changing, and I think this is a perfect example of it.
You know, Ed, having had COVID not too long ago, it feels like it's not over. It was terrible. But the president's comments, you know, differ from what other experts have said. What do you make of what he means at what comes ahead?
Well, here's the thing. He said a lot there, so it's going to allow the White House and administration officials to interpret it in different ways. But the big thing he said was the pandemic is over. That could be used for or against him in the coming months, especially if things pick up again. Earlier today, the Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra was asked about this. I'm just going to read from it because it just happened a little while ago. And he said, I think the president was reflecting what so many Americans are feeling and thinking, that COVID has disrupted our lives for so long. But we're also finding that with these effective vaccines, with the masking, with the efforts to protect our children, our seniors, where we've learned how to cope with this virus. But make no mistake, people are still dying. So in essence, he was kind of putting some nuance around what the president said, which is that while many may believe that it's over, because we're not masking, we can be closer to coworkers. We can be here at the White House and not have to wear a mask in our close quarters here, for example, or you don't have to sit there with coworkers in New York in masks or at a social distance, or people can ride the bus without masks. It's still going. Hundreds are still dying. Thousands are still being hospitalized. The World Health Organization and other international or national health organizations have not reclassified this. But in essence, what he's saying is psychologically, we're moving on, even though we still have a problem to fight.
Well, you can rely on Becerra to contextualize the meaning of what the president actually meant, given both of their responsibilities. Ed O'Keefe, thank you. You can watch the full 60 Minutes interview with President Biden on CBSNews.com or on Paramount Plus.